pleasure to continue the same theme with two great people on the panel. We've got Mr. Ramamurthy, past president of CODISSIA. For those in Coimbatore, CODISSIA. So I learned all about his business, and he's done such a phenomenal job of building a ERP business for SMEs across the country. And he's also now building out a new education business. So clearly a great entrepreneur. So pleasure to have you here, Kunal. So the theme for the session we have is that how do you generate new opportunities and early business development if you're an SME? And that's the theme. And very clearly, we all know when we set up businesses that getting early customers is the most difficult part. Because once you get your first 5, 10, 15 customers, then word spread, reputation spread, you have reference customers, you can get it. I mean, I teach some entrepreneurship courses, so I tell young people, if you're running a B2B business, find a way to get your first 5 customers smartly through your network, and then reference word of mouth will spread. If you're running B2C, then first 1,000 customers is the challenge. So getting early customers is obviously the problem. So what I'd like to do is to have a conversation with Mr. Ramamurthy and Kunal here about this topic, about their journey. So I'd like to hear from both of you. When you first started your business 15 years ago, and when you started your business many years ago, how did you first go out and get your first few customers? Were you nervous? And how did you, is it through family and friends network that you got your first few customers? What did you do? What would your advice be to young people? Mr. Ramamurthy?
Good afternoon to I'm a past president of CODISSIA. So we are into MSME only, but the first question by sir is that by my own. I started in 1987. Of course, it's a first generation. I'm a first generation entrepreneur. And of course, on those days, if I tell you why we started as an entrepreneur in Coimbatore, no, when we apply for a job, nobody pays the amount what this generation gets. This generation, after completion of their graduation, they are getting a very good payoff, and less people are coming into entrepreneurship. That has to change. Why I'm putting this straight away is, on those days when our offer was very less, we thought let us try our own, and that is how the entrepreneurship of Coimbatore developed to such an extent. But now that again, I'm appealing to all the younger generation to start their own instead of just if they are getting a good salary, they are all moving and becoming an employee. Always you should be an employer and never be an employee. So that satisfaction you should get. And of course, on those days, because today's day a different ballgame, and on those days it's a different. Of course, less of competition, but very few orders we will get. We can approach people, but in Coimbatore, it's a small town, and maximum we can cover the southern states for orders. And supply chain management was not so easy like today. And of course, technology was. I started in 1987. You should think technology was also not to this level. So of course, it is a hard journey. Minimum it took me for 3.
So Ramamurthy, if you can tell us, what was the first product that you took to market?
See, actually, from the beginning I was in supply chain. I went into supply chain and I was supplying to bigger corporates.
Okay.
So to their needs we started. And of course, getting a first order is very, very difficult. We have to satisfy their conditions, and they will be seeing our factory, and only if you are fit enough to do that, it will be coming. And it is a challenge. And in 1987, I started with some 9 to 10 workers. Today I'm employing around 100. So
to your first customer, did you have to give a big discount? Did you offer a free service? What did you do?
No, nothing like that. The quality and the delivery time, which I promised, that was the main prime objective on those days.
And what about you, Kunal?
I think mine was a bit different in terms of that journey. So we started as an ERP company. Before even doing ERP, I was a chartered accountant, sitting with my dad. Tried there for 2 years. So he had his own network of manufacturers. We'd been serving as clients of the CA firm. So my first order was from a reference only, where I did not even have a ERP at that time. I just presented, the problem statement is a manufacturing, inventory management, production management. It's not accounts. So what I saw in my years during audit, that everyone would have a parallel accounting system on Tally, regardless of being on a big ERP also. So I introduced the concept that I will do a Tally integrated ERP. So finance will be on Tally, everything else will be on my ERP. I sold it on a PPT. So this is what I'll make. I'll take 6 months to make it. Please trust me. Peanuts price. I think back then I sold it for 2 lakhs, and that's how I got my first client. The answer to your question, respect of how to sustain during those first few clients, and I would say the keyword would be collaboration, which you already mentioned. Because for me, getting a ERP customer, I sustained my first 4 years with just 6 customers, and all those 6 customers were from Bhiwadi, known manufacturers who've been in other. Now those 6 customers were not giving me enough money to sustain my entire cost. But since I was doing Tally was an entry point for me everywhere. I could enter any manufacturing company, at least by Tally. That will become a lead generation source, that will become a sustaining revenue source, that will become a source for at least having staff who would keep servicing Tally. So collaborating with a product which would be synergetic to you, which would be going to the same audience and kind of building a lead base. So as a fellow CA here, I'm pretty sure anyone is here for the CA fraternity, you'd realize that the CA firm is actually just a lead source. You'd end up selling them plots, loans, XYZ things, but the lead source is just the CA firm in terms of audits. You don't make money out of audits. So collaborating in something which goes synergetic to the same audience, so that at least your bread and butter is taken care of, and then the big ticket item sells whenever it sells.
So you were focused on people who are already using Tally and selling them this. Mr. Ramamurthy, now you started with your first product, supply chain. As you move forward, did you introduce any new products or services? And when you do that, do you rely more on your intuition, or do you do any deep research, or do you engage a consultant to say, look, what sector should I enter into, what product should I introduce? So how do you decide what opportunity to pursue? Because at any point of time, particularly when you're at an event like this, you get 10 different ideas. How do you decide what to drop and what to pursue?
You see, when I started itself, we were into, Coimbatore is predominantly dominated by engineering and textiles. So we thought of going into engineering on those days. And of course, we went into machining and fabrication. On those days, it was prime in Coimbatore. And of course, we went into heavy duty. When we made a survey, almost all smaller jobs were done by everybody. So we thought we'll go for very bigger jobs, bigger machining items, and bigger fabrications. And now I am into pressure washers and air receivers. So, like I do start from 500 liters to 25,000 liters tank cycle. So, like that, the roadmap was laid down on those days, and wherever the opportunities were there, it was only institution and attitude which we went on. And research side, it's an experience only. That's what I told you in those days. Now, if you take from CODISSIA, got so many incubation centers, we talk about startups, but on those days, all those were not there. So we just moved on, and by experience and talking to so many people, and we expanded our business.
You were out in the market, talking to customers, and you were seeing what was missing, and therefore you looked at the opportunities and decided to enter. I have a slightly different question for you. I know you've been doing this business for 15 years, but you moved from Indian markets to African markets, for example. What took you to African markets? How different is business development in India versus an international market, for example?
Okay, so what took me was a learned gentleman back in NCR, Mr. Rajiv Sharda, who told me that, Kunal, go with me to delegations and exhibitions. So I went with quite a few chapters. So it's just we went as part of a delegation to Nigeria, to Dubai, to Oman. And I got inquiries sitting there as part of the delegation. Okay, you're doing the CRP, why don't you do it in Nigeria? That's how my journey for international started. And there's been a good journey after that. But yes, business development there is very different from what we do in India. For me, if I take Nigeria as example, it was a big learning that typical meeting in India would be that, okay, we'll have 2-3 rounds. The 4th round would be probably with the MD of the company. If he closes on the table, it's closed. The next day we'll get a check. In Nigeria, an MD is a typical employee. He's not the owner of the company. So if you met the MD and we were very happy, I've closed 3 orders, then we're like, no, this is just, he's the MD. Your closure will happen in the next board meeting, you will give in 3 months. So the sales cycles are very different, the cultures are very different. In India, if you don't respond to a mail in 5 minutes, the customer gets angry. In Saudi, if you pursue too much for the name, you'll have to wait for at least 10 days for him to respond. If you just do no follow-up before 10 days, he'll get upset that why you're following up so much. So these are cultural differences which you really need to know, so that the person in the country or the client in the country absorbs you that you're there to understand the culture and work the way they want to.
Mr. Ramamurthy, have you explored international markets?
Not directly, through merchant exports only we are doing it.
Okay.
Not directly.
What about government? Again, developing business in government. I know before this, Mr. Karthikeyan spoke about the government platforms, etc. The government has a famous procurement platform called GEMS, for example. That plus otherwise selling to the government. I know normally there are horror stories, but I'm hoping that you'll have some nice stories also.
See, as you mentioned about government, I'll take it to the journey to MSME also. As you also rightly mentioned about COVID. And when from CODISSIA side also we made a survey on those days. And we found almost 70 to 80% of the MSMEs, especially micro and small, got affected through COVID. And to be surprised, only 5% of them were able to recover in a month's time. And 50 to 25% of them had taken 3 months to recover. And of course, in that, one more interesting is 70% of the MSMEs in India, they don't want to close down. So other 30% were in the verge of closure also. So when I was the president, then at the time we had a discussion with the Honorable Finance Minister, and from CODISSIA and from Coimbatore to all other associations also, like Chamber, I have seen so many good associations in Coimbatore, SIMA. We were the first pioneer to ask the Honorable Finance Minister, something you have to do for MSME. We give a direction to the banks. From Coimbatore, our voice was give a direction to the banks of give 40% working capital so that MSME can survive, otherwise MSMEs will go into extinct. Actually, that was the stage. So when you asked me a question, how was the starting? After COVID, the starting in India, the recovery was the major phenomenal changes in India. If something could have happened, you could not see an MSME and employ, but we MSMEs employ 11 crore people. Or I'll rather put it in this perspective, 1/3 of the population. Why I'm saying this, each family, if you put it as 4 people, 40 crore people are depending on MSME. But to that level, nobody talks about MSME here. So still, MSME should be talked in a much elaborate manner, and the lobbying for MSME should be also more. When we compare with Europe or other US or everything, see, we are also capable. I'll tell you one example. Just 4 weeks back, Dr. Satish Reddy from Ministry of Defense, he is an advisor to the Russia, scientific advisor. He traveled here to thank the oxygen plant. You are telling about the ventilator. I'll tell you about the Coimbatore story. From Coimbatore only oxygen plant was manufactured, and it went to all the hospitals. To a place, Delhi, All India Institute of Medical Science. The first one was from Coimbatore. Okay. And almost a supply some 10-15 companies, and I was also one among them. So we all supplied for oxygen plant materials. And then Dr. Satish Reddy said, you Coimbatore, you should name it as an oxygen of India. So that was also rising to the occasion. Right. On the station there was no shops, everything was second wave. I'm talking about where there was a heavy oxygen shortage, and only from India, Indian manufacturing companies were capable to supply the oxygen, and of course we were not dependent on the foreign. Everywhere there was a collapse. So when you are self-dependent only, you can come up, and there only MSMEs only came first to do that. That is the mention I want to make. The government support, if you say, of course, now there are so many schemes, like startups, they are given innovation. From CODISSIA, we have started a CODISSIA Defense Innovation and Adult Incubation Center, which is running in our Trade Fair complex. And almost more than 25 startup companies we have already incubated. And they are from the Ministry of Defense, from IDEX project.
So they're supporting the incubation effort,
yeah,
the government.
Yeah.
Are they supporting it as a buyer? Do you see government buying a lot of products?
Yeah, that is on the same way, as you said, no? Like GEM portal, and to all the PSUs like BEMAL or VHL, we are through Ministry of Defense, we are organizing continuous meetings, and we are getting all the drawings and all the specifications wanted. And it is a slow beginning. We are trying to convert the indigenous system from India, and especially from Coimbatore. We want to make Coimbatore a defense hub in another next 10 years. Definitely, we are getting a very good support.
Kunal, what about you? Have you done business with government?
Yes, recently, yes.
Would you focus on that in a big way?
Now, yes. So I've had my share of horror stories before, when I kind of decided I'll not do government. But recently, yes, we've had our successes. We are currently working with BPCL also. So I think 2-3 key learnings from that is one, as a first timer, it may not be a prudent move going to the government directly. Having someone as a mediator or a subcontractor who's taking the main tender and giving you the work could be a good start to at least get a taste of it. Second, you need to have enough working capital. Government doesn't work on advances. You need to make sure that by the time the deliveries are done and the payments come, you have enough working capital to sustain that time. Otherwise, if you're in a pressure on a day-to-day working capital, you'll not be able to sustain government business. Once you cross that threshold, definitely the kind of money that government brings in, the kind of size of orders the government can bring in is very high. The transparency has improved multi-fold after the GEM portal, after the invoice discounting facilities that government has started. So it's much more convenient today, but probably start slow with small ways, and then you can directly start working with the government.
So I want to, and I think one of the previous speakers also spoke about technology. So very often new business opportunities come because of technology. I know an auto component manufacturer in Chennai whose father was doing the business. When the son came in, initially he joined the family business, but then he said, can I use augmented reality, virtual reality to create a new line of business for training software for workers in automobile companies across the world, for example. And this was made possible only because these kind of technologies are now available. So, do you, when you look at all the small industries in Coimbatore, Mr. Ramamurthy, do you see people adopting new technologies very quickly to pursue new lines of business? And Kunal, I know you've gone into education, I'll come to that, but how much of the new technologies do you see are driving the business initiatives?
Actually, new technology is really a positive thinking, and from the government side also they are giving so many like incentives also for that. Like if you say for manufacturing, if you say they even given subsidies for lean manufacturing and augmentation or like this from the government, they are supporting it. The thing is now to be very practical, from micro small scale industries they are reluctant to adapt to the new technologies. Still there is we have to go far ahead. The reason being it's almost a 1 or 2 months show. They are all the entrepreneurs. They as Karthikeyan said, the number of regulatory measures, especially after GST and all, you have to do everything by yourself. So the daily routine in MSMEs, I'll tell you, not even medium, micro and small in India, they are not able to even do the routine works. And that paradigm should change. I put it as like Ashok, like Thai or CODISSIA or throughout India, we should take in a leading manner and talk to the government and say to them, we bring awareness, and we actually in today's competitive world we should change. We should change. Otherwise, we cannot competitively be in the world market or the international market. We should adopt technology in manufacturing also. Now the profit margin is going very less, and we should go for automation. There are so many things are there, but awareness is less still.
So maybe Thai, CODISSIA, organizations like we should get together to do both things actually. Yeah. One is to bring these new technologies to the MSMEs so that they don't have to go out looking for it, and that will then trigger ideas. I know you got into a new line of business in the last 2 years. Completely new set of technologies. What inspired you to do that? And you want to tell us what are you doing actually?
Okay, so what am I doing actually? So we've been into education previously. We've been running a physical school. Since COVID hit, we were supposed to make a new physical school. COVID hit, the plans got dropped. But within a quarter, when I saw my son studying and when I saw everyone going online, we, I would say, re-innovated the idea in converting a physical school into an online school. So we launched Sideboard as the 100% online school, which will remain online forever. Now, as much as the apprehensions that what would happen to the kids, their social stigma and all those things, but we've seen a beautiful response from the parents, because the access to education in India, quality education in India is still a problem. The moment you go 200 kilometers from a metro city or a tier 1 city, the quality of education drops drastically. So that access, making it reach the remotest towns, as I told you, we have students even from Afghanistan, because Taliban has stopped girl child to go to schools anymore. So we have students from Afghanistan studying online. Now they can at least continue their education. So COVID has brought in opportunities and ideas which did not even exist before, which were literally unthinkable before. But yes, they've opened up potentials to a very, very large extent.
I know there's a lot of sub things that we can keep discussing, but I know time is a constraint, so we'll stop the discussion here. But thank you very much, Mr. Ramamurthy and Kunal. We've covered a lot of ground in terms of how you started, got your first few customers, your views on international business development, doing business with government, and the role of technology. Thank you very much. I am sure it was helpful for the audience.
Thank you.